The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
George,
Lions.
how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Not as good as after we played some games, but not as bad as after we played others. So
Once we have enough episodes under our belt, couldn't you just start all of them like that?
well, yes, as T goes to infinity, I mean, I guess technically, there will always be the times when we start one where it's like, nope, this is the new low. Like
this is the new worst and the new best. And eventually that will also be a large enough set that it'll be like, well, is this the new best as of 2017, 2020, 2015? Where am I in the timeline?
2072, and yeah, and also too, it would be it's like that one Debbie Downer person on that one movie where it's just kind of like, every day I'm alive is worse than the day before. So every day you see me, it's the worst day of my life. So hopefully our video gaming doesn't go in that trend.
Yeah, God, I hope not. But now I'm trying to remember what the source material for that line is. It's going to bug me. I'll figure it out later. So this time we played NBA Jam. Mm-hmm. Not Tournament Edition, not one of the ports or the remakes, but the original OG, not an arcade cabinet, but the original NBA Jam. And I've noticed the more we've done these and the more I look these games up, I realized it shouldn't be shocking to me how many of these games were arcade games as well as console games, because that's not that unusual for this time in history. The reason it's shocking to me is because so much of the games that I played, like mostly RPGs and like action adventure games, that were not arcade games.
Right. Yeah, most of the games that, I mean, especially with timelines and time frames that we have to do these episodes is like that we've been playing are mostly and we try to switch up the genres to a degree, are shorter experiences. And they absolutely, I mean, if I was a video game exec and I had to either make a really large quantity and quality game, or I mean do a whole bunch of coke and port an arcade cabinet, I mean that coke's not going to snort itself.
Presumably all video game executives. I mean, it was the 80s and 90s. Like, yeah. I mean, was anyone doing anything else?
I think that was pretty much it. It was cocaine, and then in the absence of cocaine, more cocaine.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm all out of cocaine. I guess I've got all this cocaine.
What are we going to do with literally, not figuratively, a ton of cocaine?
This is funny because I can't remember the exact date, but sometime in the 80s, I think before consoles were like popular, but in like the mid to late-ish 80s was when like the video game crash of like 87 or 84 or whatever it was happened, where because like Atari was super hot and then arcades were a big deal, and then all of the sudden that stopped. I think they made a documentary about it. Yeah, if I could find it, I won't put it in the show notes because we haven't done any follow-up, and I super love not having to do that.
No, the only thing I really know about the video game crash of the 19 is just that it was caused by E.T. the video game. Like, that's my main takeaway from that.
That is, if I recall correctly from the documentary, not entirely true, but more true than Atari would like to admit.
Yeah, it's more so like the Silver Surfer to the Galactus that was the crash, right? It was the harbinger and directly impacted it, but did not eat the video game industry to fuel itself.
So there are just no segues away from that. So I'll just go ahead and ask you, do you have nostalgia goggles for this game? Like what was your child's gaming experience of the Jam? That's what Jam? The cool kids called it.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, like to be honest, I would actually say that so I didn't own this game. My friend did. And it was my friend from childhood because I don't remember this person well at all. So it wasn't like, like, oh yeah, my best friend that I used to go over to his house and we used to play all of these games. Now, this was like somebody I tangentially knew from school. And so that was primarily
a vehicle by which you got access to NBA Jam.
Basically, yeah. Is that, I would ride my bicycle from downtown and then go over to his house and we would just like play this game. And I remember at the time it being like wildly engaging and super cutting edge and oh my God. And now I'm just kind of like, wow, this is it is by all technicalities a game. But
it meets the bare minimum requirements.
Yeah, there's a score and everything. But yeah, no, and that actually can segue us into the visuals. What were your thoughts on how well they held up?
Well, the gameplay graphics I actually was pretty okay with. So there's I don't know the right terminology for this. An artist could probably set me straight, but there are different styles of pixel graphics. And like the style that I think most people think of is like your Super Marios or your Final Fantasies, because Super Mario, it was very cartoony and very obvious. Like not a single pixel was wasted. And then like in the Final Fantasy games, it was kind of weird looking, but it was because they were going for the highest level of detail they could possibly squeeze into those tiny little sprites. So it wasn't always as obvious what was happening, but you got a little bit more detail out of it. This style is almost more like what I remember from like the Atari era, where everyone's like a little skinny and they all kind of have the same shaped head. Like it's a little bit more on like what you saw in like PC games from this era. Almost no one ever has eyes. They just have like pupil dot.
Yeah.
And like, two dots for the mouth and then like one slightly raised kitty corner dot to make it like a little smile or a little frown. Like, I don't know why. Just that style has never been my preferred style of pixel art graphics, but would
you say it's never been your jam?
It oh Christ. Settle in, folks. It's going to be 90 minutes of this.
Or in. Either or.
Run away now. So yeah, it's not my, like, I don't like that style of graphics, but even on like newer games that are in a retro style that use that style, I'm just kind of like, but that's a personal flavor thing. I feel like they convey the information they're trying to convey. It's just not my general opinion of good graphics. I will say the one place the graphics hilariously fell down, like unbelievably badly fell down, is the little like full motion video during the halftime.
Oh yeah. I remember seeing that and like and it was funny because I definitely could see through the nostalgia goggles on that one, because at the time I was just kind of like, oh my God, it's like watching what just happened, but like in real life. And then this one, like, I thought, like, do they play a different cutscene depending on like what happened during the game? I strongly doubt that.
No, and it just depends on which team you are.
Yeah, basically. And so, but one of the things though that they did do that I thought was, I don't know if this was a conscious choice or like just kind of something that they tripped and fell into something that I thought worked pretty well, which is that, yeah, I completely agree that like basically all of the sprites were pretty uniform, I mean, basically you had like, skin tone X and Y, and then like has hair, does not have hair, and then team jerseys, and that was it, Yeah. But for each team, when you select them, they actually did have like a decent character model of like the individual player, or players.
Yeah, like on the team selection screen.
Right. And so I actually found that made it easier for me to project that individual onto that sprite, So like without those pictures of the individuals in the select screen, I would have been like, I have no idea. Like it's like Manning or no, God, that's a football player. Oh man, it's not going to be too long going into this before everybody realizes that you could fill books with what I don't know about sports, and they did. They're called books on sports. But no, is it like, without a picture of the individual, like I would have just been like, oh, these are just random sprites, but with the pictures of the individuals, I was like, oh, this is clearly this person who I am playing as. And I thought that
yeah. Well, and so did you jump around teams? Because I only remember ever playing as the Chicago Bulls as a kid, and so help me God, I only played as the Chicago Bulls as an adult.
Yeah, I did 2 different teams. I started off as the Charlotte Hornets.
Okay.
And then
From the state of Charlotte.
Yes, from the United States of Charlotte. And then I had to go with the Knicks, mostly
New York Knickerbockers?
Mostly because I watched a lot of Friends, and Joey was a fan of the Knicks because the Knicks rule all. So
that's adorable.
Well, and also too, to be entirely honest, and I wish I didn't spend this much time on this, but like first thing I did is I just picked a team till I kind of get into the groove, and then I definitely went through every single team and eyeballed the stats for who had the 2 players that like had the most green,
right?
Like across the board, because I was like, look, man, my skill's garbage, so y'all AIs are going to have to make up for my shortcomings.
Carry your weight, damn it.
So and from as near as I could tell, it was the Knicks, and I was like, well, that holds up because the Knicks rule all, and then that was all the thought I put into it, and then I played as the Knicks throughout.
So the reason I ask is because the Bulls, one of the it's Pippen and Johansson. It's not Johansson, but it's Pippen and someone else, and one of the 2 wears those like the kind of big safety goggles you wear, like the clear glasses that like cover a big part of your face, and they actually put those on the sprite. So like
nice.
you see them on the character select or on the team select screen, and they are kind of like loosely animated onto the sprite. So that makes it incredibly easy because, I mean, both of those guys are black with shaved heads. So, I mean, their sprites look virtually indistinguishable.
Right.
Just like, all the white guys with blonde hair are virtually indistinguishable. So, like, it's like, oh, goggles guy, not goggles guy. Especially because one of them, and I can't believe I can't remember which, but one of them couldn't make threes to save their life. And the other one was awesome at threes. So just remembering like, oh, goggles guy, awesome at threes, like that was enough of a visual cue that I didn't have to see my reflection in his goggles, through amazing HD graphics. I was just like, goggles guy, not goggles guy.
Yeah, and that's all you need to know about basketball, folks. Is that goggles guy is terrible at threes.
Yeah. Or was awesome. It was one of them.
I did think that the dunking animations, I mean, obviously it's NBA Jam, but I did think the dunking animations were enjoyable to watch. And
yes, they definitely put the majority of their love and animation time into those super dunks, and they're so good.
No, they are. That was enjoyable. It was satisfying, like every time I did it. Like and so obviously that's what they wanted you to do. They didn't want you to sit there and just be shooting threes all day long. They wanted you to be jamming, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, it's cartoon dunks the game, right? Because I mean, even before you build up your meter and you get on fire from 3, uninterrupted scores, your normal super dunks are still like over the backboard, over the rim, like where your knees go up over the backboard, like you're jumping 12 feet in the air. I mean, and those are your normal super dunks.
Yeah, no, I mean, like when you like jump probably 12 feet in the air, turn around 3 times, and then dunk the ball behind your head, like while everybody is like taking pictures of it. To be fair, I would also be taking pictures of that, because that would be like, then it's followed by like, like scientists invent super serum, like tests it on NBA players,
How cool was that little flashbulb thing though? Because if you did a regular dunk, you didn't get the flashbulbs, but if you did super dunk, and once you were on fire, then you started getting the flashbulbs, and I was like, that's a nice little touch.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, and that's the thing is that mechanically it was like a legless like fish just desperately trying to crawl onto land, but as far as some of the visuals, especially as it circled around the primary engagement thing that they were like, this is what we're going to sell, is dunking, around that, they clearly put a lot of time and energy into it, and it showed. I really did think that it was well done, and that at least those visuals, I think, held up to the way I remembered them. Like, they were enjoyable and varied and good back in the day, and they still are, considering obviously the level of technology involved.
Well, and to your specific question about like how well does it convey what's happening, there is two basketball related things on the screen other than the actual basketball, and one of them I found to be indispensable, and the other one was like a secret code that once I unlocked made me like way better at the game. So the indispensable one is especially we'll talk about this when we get to mechanics, but because of the AI nonsense, like it shows you by putting a basketball behind the name of the player who has the ball. So you can just very quickly, like out of the corner of your eye, see like, is it all the way to the left or is it like not all the way to the left? And that's how I know like which teammate has the ball. So that's the kind of obvious one. The secret code was once the ball goes over like 2 or 3 feet in the air, you can't tell where the hell that thing is. It is completely impossible to tell, but there's a tiny little ball shadow on the court. And if you just move your shadow to the ball's shadow, you will automatically it's not like you have to grab the ball. It's not virtual reality. Like you just have to be anywhere near the ball and you will, put it into your basketball man hands. So like one, I probably played, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 games before it occurred to me that I could do that. And I was just like, oh my God. In the next game, I won by like 30 points. Like it just made such a massive difference.
Well, and that's actually good to know because and we'll definitely talk about it more when we hit mechanics and gameplay. But it is good to know that is possible because I played a number of games and I had a theory that I think you're disproving. So that's at least a plus, and it's good because my theory was pretty damning. But
well, so just as a teaser before we get to how well and poorly we did you change the difficulty?
I did not. I couldn't find where there was difficulty. I couldn't find the.
Yeah, it's in the options.
Is it?
Yeah.
Huh.
I know because there's like 6 difficulty settings, and I didn't go all the way down to very easy. I just played on easy. Mm-hmm. But yeah. I'm sure that gave me because I wanted to like I'm not. In real life and in video game land, I am not a sport baller. So. Right. I was like, I want to enjoy this. I don't want to completely dominate to the point where it's boring, and I don't want to be so challenged that I embed my controller in the wall. And so I started playing on easy, and I won every game I played, but not with a huge margin. I won by like 2 points, 10 points, like somewhere in there. And then that one game, I just freaking blew them out of the water somehow.
Nice.
But that was like, that kept it consistently enjoyable.
Yeah, and that's good. And actually, the fact that you played on easy and I played on normal, then I could make the argument that the difficulty is the difference in the AI issue I was having. But we will get to that. There was another thing on the visuals is so as far as like they reinforce gameplay, right? 2 things. One that actually speaks to what you just said, which is that I did not think that they opposed gameplay like they have in some of the games that we've played. But at the same point in time, I didn't think that they did a whole lot to help either. So like, for example, like you said, like there's the ball shadow and like your shadow, right? And like at no point do I really feel like that was like telegraphed to me to the point where it's like, or even in like the game tips, because they have game tips like in between each game, where it's like coaching.
Yeah, actually pretty useful, most of them, but there's only like 5.
Exactly. Yeah, there's like 5 where it's just and all 5 of them I was like, oh, okay, I'll try that. If one of them was just kind of like, hey, there's a shadow on the ground, line your shadow up, like that would have been like, oh, okay, that's good to know. One of the places though where it was certainly not as bad as the game where you spend the entire time trying to figure out if you're in the same plane as your as your enemy. But at the same point in time, like a lot of times, like people would like they'd shoot for the basket, and I would literally leap up through the basket, like up in through the net, popping out like like a basketball flower through the hoop, and like no, none of this, and it would somehow still go in, and I was like, I don't know what more I could have done to stop that because I really feel like somehow the ball started vibrating and then it vibrated through my body.
Phased through you.
And I was just kind of like either that or like the big reveal was like I was dead the whole time and like just a ghost. And like then all of a sudden it's like, I look back and it's the I See Dead People of NBA Jam. But yeah, so So I did not feel that the visuals were very helpful especially in like stopping the other team from scoring.
Yeah, and any of the faux 3D where it's like you're looking along the y-axis, like it's not perfectly vertical in front of you, like you're kind of looking down the road, but there isn't any real sense of depth.
Right.
So you know, and there were times where I would be like running to do my super dunk, because really we're all just here to be on fire and do super dunks.
I guess.
Yeah, and there were times where I would just run what felt like right through an opposing player, like not like past their guard. I mean, like through their midsection, and I was just kind of like, I'm not like, do I give him the ball? Like, I feel like that wasn't very fair.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like there were definitely times where, you know, I was just hauling butt, and actually, so this will also be talked about in gameplay, but like where again, like I didn't always see the correlation between when I was able to just blow past a person versus when I hit them like a truck, you know. Like there seemed to be like it was just like every time it happened, it was just kind of like roll the dice, Raggedy Man, but like I don't get to see the result. All I get to like, you know, like what the roll was, all I get to see is the DM saying, yeah, you missed. And it's like, okay.
Did I do wonder in games like this where there is a very clearly defined hitbox because of the nature of pixels, like the hitbox has to be square, right? Or rectangular, I should say. I wonder when you lower or raise the difficulty, if it actually ever, certainly some games have made that affect the size of the hitbox, right? Where like maybe on easy, I could get within a pixel of them that you would not have been able to get into on normal. Like I'm sure they don't tune it more than they have to, but certainly some games have gone to that length where they're like, okay, on easy mode, it has to hit you, you know, bullseye on. And on hard mode, if it's like in the same zip code as you, you take damage.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I mean, that would stand to reason. That would be a very easy way to tweak the difficulty, you know.
Yeah.
So certainly it's possible. But I did remember a couple of times, like just, you know, I feel that if a game's done well, right, then at no point should you say, you know, like what the ass just happened, you know, like I have no idea what just happened to me. So there were definitely times in this game where I was just kind of like, oh, okay. Like it was very similar to, you know, like if I was playing with friends and like just like dribbling the ball, you know, like, and I'm about to like go do my awesome dunk because I can totally dunk. I can't dunk. But anyways, and so like as I'm dribbling it, all of a sudden, like I feel like the resistance stop hitting my hand, and then I stop and turn around and somebody has stolen the ball from me. Right. And like, it was like that. Where all, like I'm still hauling butt toward the, you know, towards the net, and like the screen's not following me anymore. It's following the ball, and the ball is heading back.
Gone.
My poor one other guy who is now doing 2-on-1 defense, desperately struggling, saying like, "For the love of God, come help me."
What are you doing? You lost the ball hours ago.
Oh yeah, and that's why like one of the other reasons why I picked the Knicks is because one guy, the one place where I think they had like a failing, you know, was that one person was amazing at defense and one person was terrible at defense. And I played the guy that was terrible at defense because I never played defense. I was like, no, that's your field, dude. You handle that, and I will just be the dunk master flex.
So, speaking of all these dunks and puns you've been making, I guess we could talk about the music in that there's some on the title screen.
Yes, there is.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, it's actually, I found it to be pretty memorable in that, like, as soon as it started playing, I was like, oh, it's NBA Jam, right? Like it wasn't, like, I couldn't even hum it for you right now, and I played this morning, but...
and I'm playing... right now.
But it was like immediately identifiable. Like it's, you know, the deep connections way back in the lizard part of my brain were like, you've played this game a lot. You know exactly what you're about to get into, which I found pretty satisfying. And then when I actually got into a game and there was no music, at first I was like, oh, there's no music. And then like halfway into the first quarter of the first game, I completely forgot that there was no music. And then when something made me think about it later, I was like, I'm glad there's no music.
I do think that like the lack of music certainly didn't hurt anything. I think it did help a little bit because one of the things that it emphasized was the sound effects, and the thing that's the two sound effects that are very consistent, right, are one, the basketball hitting the ground, yeah. And two, the which I thought was a very nice touch because I wouldn't have thought of this off the top, is the scuffing of shoes on the like those are the two sounds, and that just screams it sounds like basketball, like those are the sounds that you hear.
Yeah,
and so
dribble noise and squeaky noise, you're like, basketball.
Yeah, exactly. There must be basketball happening. Like if I was like going down, like a corridor in like a horror movie, and then I heard like those two sound effects, I'd be like, I don't know where the killer is, but I can tell you for sure that basketball is happening in that other room. So I thought that actually, in retrospect, I was just kind of like, well, you know what? Like, I think that if there was music playing over that, it would have distracted from that. So I felt that there are rare cases where you can say like, oh, well, the absence of a thing actually enhances it. But I think that this was one of those cases.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the squeaking of shoes and the dribbling of the ball are repetitive, but you expect that and tolerate it. Whereas the announcer has a 5-word dialogue or a 5-word vocabulary in his entire 6 lines of dialogue, and it's like no good, terrible shot, he's on fire from downtown, boom shakalaka, which man, the first time I dunked and he said boom shakalaka, like I could at that moment, for just that moment, it's gone now. But having not played this game in like 20 years, for just that moment, I could have told you the color of the bowl Kevin and I were eating Doritos out of in his room playing NBA Jam. Like that, just like I dunked and he was like, boom, shakalaka. And I just was like the end of 2001 A Space Odyssey, just like transported back.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like I had a very similar experience when I was playing because like it's like from downtown, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like terrible shot, and I was like, nah, all right, that's fine. Boom, shakalaka, and I was like, oh my god. It was, to me, the emotional experience of you've seen the new Doctor Strange movie, right?
Yeah.
So no spoilers.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, but like literally when the master like palms him in the chest and knocks his astral form out. It was that, but it was like 12-year-old me behind like my adult body, where all of a sudden like 12-year-old me is like eerily looking at my 12-year-old hands like, what's going on? And then like slammed back into my real body. And I was like, oh, right. Yeah, that was like a huge thing back. Oh, God, what was it? That'd be 20 years ago?
Oh, yeah, at least. No, more.
Yeah.
Quite. Yeah. Ugh. Anyway, the thing I found kind of intense about that particular nostalgia experience is if you held a gun to my head and said, tell me all the things that are nostalgic about your life, I would say this is a weird way to get this information out of me.
Obviously, yeah.
And then I probably nowhere in that list would have said boom shakalaka from NBA Jam. But when it actually happened, like it's this is like someone who has like CIA programming. Like I didn't know that was there, but the minute my trigger word came out, like I just was 10 years old again playing NBA Jam at my friend's house. Like it was surprisingly like resounding.
What would have been even more eerie is if like all of a sudden you heard like boom shakalaka and you're like, oh man, that's weird. God, I haven't heard that forever. And you look down and you're eating like Fruit Loops and you're like, well, that's weird. I didn't think we had any Fruit Loops. And you turn you're like, hey Susan, did we buy Fruit Loops? It's like you see her like in the corner and she's like holding your kids, like looking at you like kind of scared. It's like you just stood up, got into the car, drove to the grocery store, bought Fruit Loops, sat down and started eating. And you're like, you look at your watch, you're like, oh God, it's been 2 hours, like very Manchurian Candidate,
if you have to kidnap someone and torture them into shattering their mind and then reprogramming them as a different person, you could do a lot worse than Fruit Loops and NBA Jam.
That is true. And this is very tangential, but
No, this is directly on par for what I've come to expect out of these conversations.
but no, I feel like I'd be loath to not tell this particular story. So when my wife and I were first dating, she worked for Disney. She worked for the mouse, right? And so she we were talking one time on the phone, and she was just basically like, "Oh my God, I'm so sick of working there. This place is awful." Like all of these like litany of things that, are typical of jobs that you have at about that age. And I was like, "Well, that sucks, whatever." And she's like, "Yeah, we're going to this like big like team meeting or something like that, like help build morale." I was like, "Okay, that's fine." And then she called me afterwards, and she was just like, "Oh my God, Disney is the best place to work. It's just so nice. I could really see myself having a future here." And I remember being like, distinctly like uneasy. I was like, "Yeah, did you eat anything while you were there, or like did the air smell funny? Like this is quite a 180."
People forcing a lot of Kool-Aid on you.
And she was like, no, it's just great. And so to this day, I live in a little bit of fear that something going to be going through like the grocery store with the mother of my children, and somebody's just going to lean into her and go, "Rhubarb." And she's just going to like snap to, and we're never going to see her again, except for 10 years from now. I'm going to be taking my kids to Disney World, and on the It's a Small World ride, I'm just going to see Megan
She'll be one of the little.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is very akin to that, where it's just like apparently I thought that she was the Manchurian Candidate, but it was me, and the trigger word was boom shakalaka.
God, it's funny every time.
Yeah, no, it's like Cucamonga, or like it's one of those words.
It's a Krusty the Clown funny word.
Yep, exactly.
I actually did saying he's on fire and boom shakalaka 50 times did remind me that I actually one of the things I liked the most, not because it was particularly high quality visual, but the ball on fire and the little smoke trail is like deeply satisfying, because it's only like that when you have it or whoever's on fire has it. Like if it goes to their teammate, they're not on fire, you're on fire.
Yeah.
And like it's just if you throw a 3, you get this like big glowing ball like in an arc with the smoke trail, or like when you dunk, it gets like the little puff of smoke like out of the net, and it's like I didn't get to see those animations as much as I would have liked, because it's hard to maintain, but it's like it was a touch that dressed up the rest of the experience.
Yeah, and actually, though, I did not get to the degree on fire that you need to in order to experience that. I got to the degree on fire to where, like, when I would dunk, the net would catch fire, but not to the point where, like, by sheer virtue of having the ball in my presence, I lit it ablaze. Like, I did not.
I think there's like 2 levels maybe. And I think it's easier to get on the lower difficulties, because on the difficulty I was playing, you only had to score 3 in a row.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely scored 3 in a row, but that only lit the net and stuff on fire, like when I would dunk. Or I mean, maybe the ball was on fire. I was quite the ball hog, because, like I said, my teammate, great on D, pretty awful at everything else. So like every time we'd set up and he'd pass me the ball, I just was like, yeah, this, and I just hit the turbo and then just sprint as hard and as fast as I could to the end and dunk it, and then just kind of hope for the best. So maybe
it's like, oh, I dunked, now it's your problem.
Yeah, basically, it's like I was the guy spending all of the fliff, and I'm like, now go earn me more money, so that way I can dunk some more. But
so I kind of. The more I'm thinking about controls and mechanics, like I feel like for the nature of this game, I cannot separate these things. Because I mean, the controls are the D-pad, turbo button, and then the 2 buttons do the same thing. So it's shoot and block, and then steal and pass.
Yes. So
you have multiple buttons, but there's not a lot of complication to the controls.
No, pretty much. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's actually straightforward to the point where I struggled with it at first, because
right.
Yeah.
How many times did you jump into the air like a crazy person with everyone disappearing behind you, and you're just like, that's not what I meant to do.
Oops. Yeah, no, exactly that. No, and also too, though, because I expected each button to do a different thing, and because the 2 buttons that do the same thing, do different things conditionally.
Yep.
That threw me because my scientific brain was breaking under the do you think A, it does thing B? Great. Do you think C, it does thing B? Huh. Do you think A again, it does thing D? And I'm like, okay, wait, no. And then and I actually had to pause it and go find the manual for the game. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, okay, these two buttons do the same thing and they are conditional based on what's happening.
Yep.
All right, I can kind of get my mind around that. That does, however, kind of lead us, since we're talking about gameplay and controls, lead me into my big conspiracy theory gripe about this game. So,
all right, let's hear it.
So, as I just mentioned, in the beginning, I literally did not know what any of the buttons did, to the point where I had to pause the game and figure it out, right? And so then, of course, like you said, there were the moments where I would jump when I meant to pass and all of that fun jazz. That was game 1. By game 5, I had all of that
Boom shakalaka
well under control, and was I was like, all right, well, in this situation, I want to dunk, and in this situation, I want to play more D. And if I hit turbo while doing this, I kind of figured out some of the combinations and all that sort of stuff. So on the first game, I lost by 1 point. On the second game, I won by 1 point. On the third game, I won by 1 point. On the fourth game, I won by 1 point.
And on some serious rubber band physics going on.
And on the fifth game, I won by 1 point. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I'm confident that my skill is at least improving, probably linearly. I certainly feel like I am doing better. However, my performance is not changing, especially because there would be times when I would play, in my opinion, immaculately. And I would get ahead by 6 points. I was like, all right. And then all of a sudden, my teammate wouldn't play for
Boom shakalaka.
I was getting stolen from my right, knocked on my ass. It was just a hot mess, and yeah. And then all of a sudden I was just kind of okay. And so no matter what happened, but then if I started to fall behind, if I was 3 points behind, all of a sudden I was making a bunch of steals, and Lady Luck favored me the most. And so I was just kind of I'm not saying that the game's cheating. I'm saying that maybe they're not trying as hard as they need to until I actually get ahead, and they're like, oh wait, and then they do the thing in video games when you're screwed in a first person versus shooter, when you're playing with somebody really experienced, when they lean forward.
Yeah, the elbows on the knees.
Yeah,
brow kind of furrowed. Yeah, you're screwed at that point.
Yeah. When they go from leaning back, eating some Fritos, and all of a sudden they're and then they lean forward, where you're oh nope, that's game. I've already lost. That's what the game did. Was it would occasionally just lean forward and go oh well, apparently I need to start playing in order to make this interesting. I'm don't make it interesting. Just
how many times were we playing Rock Band where it was oh, this is a standing song? I can't play this song on expert sitting down, lounging on the couch. This is a standing up song.
Yeah, you stand up, you roll your shoulders,
worse, you get halfway into the song, so you've gone through a whole verse and half the chorus, and then you stand up because you're on the verge of failing. I thought this was a sitting down song.
But after you hear pluck, 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 and you're oh no,
no, gotta get up. No, I have lots of complaints about the AI in this game, so we'll get to that. But in the defense of good AI, you could argue, particularly in a sporting ball game, that when the other team is in the lead, maybe they're really not playing as hard. And then when you're in the lead, they do play harder, and you do get your team gets in their own heads, and that's why they're more likely to make mistakes and get cocky and whatever. I don't think this AI is anywhere near that sophisticated, but I could imagine that in a modern game.
Oh yeah, no, I could definitely see that in a modern game. I think that the thing that was frustrating to me was it was just kind of when I would get 3 or 4 points ahead, right? Where I was just kind of okay, all I need to do now is just not make a mistake. And then I would pass the ball the same way I passed it hundreds of times, but this time it got stolen, and I'd be yeah, all right, that's fine. But the fact that, I said, it was fairly consistent in the fact that the minute I got ahead, that lead was taken from me. Like it felt like it was taken, like that I didn't lose the lead.
It was taken from you.
And so that got frustrating, just because then all of a sudden and like I said, and I'd be more okay with it if it was, if I then like went on to lose by like 10 points, like as weird as that sounds, because then I might have actually gotten frustrated and been like, okay, let me see if there is a difficulty setting. But then like the fact that it's like, no matter how well I felt I played or how poorly I felt I played, I always won or lost by about 1 point. I was like, then why try at all? Like doesn't matter. Like
what is the point of life?
Yeah. No, it's it was very much so like the government controls everything, like they're drugging your drinking water. So I was just kind of
like of all the games in the world, NBA Jam is the one that is going to turn you into a nihilist.
Oh yeah, no,
life
absolutely.
is meaningless. NBA Jam.
Like you're just gonna like you're just gonna like come over, to visit like one time, and you're just gonna see that I've got like this like fallout shelter, full of like canned goods. And it's like, what happens? Like, well, if I learned anything from NBA Jam, it's like, well, you shouldn't have learned this. Like, I don't know what sentence you end with what I've learned from NBA Jam, but
nothing
apocalypse
good.
prep is not.
None of those sentences end with anything good.
What is that called again? When the people who are consistently preparing for the end of
Doomsday preppers?
Doomsday preppers. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, you should not do that.
No, it's seems like a big waste of money.
Yep.
So I'm gonna bitch about the AI a bunch now. So
sweet.
There's a setting which surely you didn't find because you didn't go into the settings, called tag mode. Does this sound at all familiar to you?
No.
Okay, so in the arcade, there are 4 actual, joysticks and button sets, because the presumption is that you would be playing, and I would ride up on my banana seat bicycle and take the baseball card out of the spokes and come inside to the soda shop. I don't know how we're playing this arcade game in the 50s and 60s, but there we are. Yeah, actually, I guess that would have been more like the 70s. Still 15 years too early to have even known about this, but whatever. So I come inside and I'm like, oh, hey, there's George. I'm going to go put my quarter in and take over the AI player. Well, when they moved this to the home console, they added this thing called tag mode. And tag mode means that whoever has the ball is being controlled by the human. I didn't know that. So I played all of the games, presumably the way you played, where it's you as one of the people and the AI as the other people. Yes. And there were no less than 6 instances in the probably dozen games that I played. So like once every other game on average, where I would accidentally pass the ball, because that was almost never what I wanted, since I was now out of control.
Right.
And I would pass the ball to the other player and they would do something for a minute and then stop and stand perfectly still. And then eventually have the ball stolen or the shot clock run out. And it actually got to the point where this morning I had to Google, like, how do you make them pass it back to you? Like, is there, like, if I press pass with like both of the pass buttons, will they return the ball to me? But no, there's literally just a setting where you always control the ball, and otherwise you have to just rely on the crappy AI.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's weird, because, and it may have just been because, like you said, like passing, not something you want to do. Like it's very odd in a team-based game for you to be like, yeah, there is an I in team. It's the negative space in the A. That's the I in team, and that's me. And to hell with everybody else, because like, no, like I didn't pass the ball if I could avoid it. But that being said, on the occasions when I did pass the ball, I found that I could get the guy to pass back to me just by hitting pass again. So I don't know what setting I had turned on to do that, or the fact that maybe the handful of times I did it, every time I hit pass was just happened to be the same time that he passed to me.
No, I will go so far as to say that I must be an idiot who literally never tried that, because no, I'm willing. I don't want to blame these poor programmers. Like, it's not their fault, I'm willing to admit that this is on me because 100% of the time that I gave the ball to the other player, it did not come back. Not once. Not a single time. Because I was expecting him to be in a position where giving the ball up was the correct thing to do, and then for him to do it. So it didn't even cross my mind until it was too late and we were going to be getting ready to record. I was like, can I make him pass back to me? And if so, why is that the only time I can enter him, Danny Ghost style and like conduct his controls for just this one thing?
Yeah. No, because the way I found out was kind of
Danny Phantom, not Danny Ghost. I knew that didn't sound right.
Danny Phantom. There's another thing from the 90s.
Right.
But the only reason why I was able to find out was because like I accidentally hit pass and then like did the quick frantic panic where I just kept hitting the button. You're like, no. Like, oh my, I made this mistake. Maybe if I keep making it, then it'll get better. And it did though. So, because then he immediately like passed it back off to me. I was like, oh neat. So I'm pretty confident that if you hit pass when the other guy has it, that he will pass it back to you, which actually makes your narrative way funnier because you were getting frustrated with him for not passing to you and he was getting frustrated. The AI was like, when's this guy going to tell me to pass? I don't even.
Do you want it back? I mean, I'm standing here.
And by the way, when you said like he's waiting, he either got it stolen from him or waiting for the shot clock to run out. Like I know that he would have just stood there and the shot clock would have run out. But when you said that, immediately my mind played an animation, which does not exist in the game, of him sitting down and crossing his legs and just sitting down patiently with the ball, like, I'm just going to hang out here because I don't know what else to do.
See, that would have been an excellent, like, in-between games tip. Like, hey, moron, he'll give it back to you if you ask for it.
Oh, no, wait. That's even better because it's teaching young kids, like, if you just ask, a lot of the times you'll get the ball back, Yeah.
See, like, we found at least one good lesson in NBA Jam. What I learned from NBA Jam is if you ask for the ball back, sometimes they'll give it back.
It's, I don't know why. It reminds me of that whatever, the How Do Dinosaurs Play with Their Friends book. Does Emily or
Anna
apparently not. No, it's a children's book where it's like how do dinosaurs play with their friends, and it basically says like like when friends come over, are dinosaurs like huge jerks? No, they're really nice. So it's like like are NBA Jam players huge jerks? No, they're really nice. If you just ask, would turn too. So yeah, the more you know.
So here's another controls thing that I got bit by it first and then found a way around, and it kind of had hilarious results. So you have to hold down turbo when you dunk to do a super dunk,
right? Which why would you ever not do that? By the way, is there a reason
you do run out of a turbo meter?
I mean, eventually, but in the same way that like I'll eventually run out of food given like enough time, but like.
Meaning you're just eating nonstop until you eat all the world's food.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. It's like, technically I will run out of food. Like that's a thing. But like the way the speed at which the turbo meter replenishes and I never felt, there was like maybe once or twice where things went so far south where like I had to ease off the turbo meter for like 2 seconds and then immediately.
Yeah, it's not a long time that you have to allow it to regenerate.
Yeah, no, it was because at first like it wasn't until the game thing came on. It was like, hey, by the way, man, there's a turbo thing. I was like, turbo thing. At that point,
go on.
It was easier to describe my gameplay in times when I wasn't using the turbo because it was like that was the exception to the rule.
Well, so you weren't even bothering to play defense. So did you notice? Did you notice that if you press the like guard button without turbo, you kind of do, the stereotypical basketball, like I'm trying to get in your way, but I can't touch you because that's against the rules. But then
the very stereotypical like 5-year-old sibling.
Yeah, just flailing windmill arms. So then if you're holding down turbo when you press that, you shove like you're a 10-year-old trying to start a fight.
I did do that because I may not have been playing much D, but I may not always play defense. But when I do, I play it like a huge jerk because
So this is the thing. Once I realized that not only was that an option, but that it had a high success rate and there was no penalty, I was just like, I stopped my sportsmanlike conduct went into the toilet. I became a violent psychopathic brute whenever I didn't have the ball.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. I mean, like there was like I said, because to me, once I found out that it would be like if somebody said like, hey man, do you want to do speed? I'm like, dude, man, I don't do drugs. Like, here's the thing though. There's absolutely no downsides. It's completely free and it will make your life better in every conceivable way. Only occasionally will you have to be off of it. And there's no withdrawal effects to be like, yes to all of that. Why am I not on it right now? So once I found out about the turbo speed, I never stopped with the turbo speed, and I was not sportsmanlike at all. It was probably closer to Fight Club than to basketball because a lot of people got knocked out. Like I expected at one point. Especially because I was giving this one particular player the business really hard because I kind of stopped a little bit playing to win and started a little bit playing to give him the business because I was on fire and he stopped me from being on fire. So the name of the game changed to ruining this guy's life as opposed to like winning the game. And I would not have been surprised if all of a sudden I saw like a very rudimentary 16-bit sprite knife come out and this guy at me, and if he did, I would have been like, no, that's completely legit because
I don't know what else I would have expected. Well, so the thing that like I'm not. I mean, we've been making jokes, but I mean, neither of us follow any professional sports. Like,
God,
I know you played football for a while as a kid, but like, I never even played.
I played left bench. Like, I kept that bench nice and warm. And I did my job well, but to say I played football is playing it fast and loose with the word played. But yes, I was on the football team. That would be a more accurate
I respect that level of introspection in a person. But what I'm getting at is even as little as I follow professional or college sports, there are certain things that I'm fairly aware of. And in basketball, I'm pretty sure shoving a guy repeatedly to the ground is not allowed.
I'm confident that you're correct. Yes.
Right. And I'm also fairly positive, and this one I get a little bit more, but traveling is like a thing in basketball. And
they don't like that.
No. And I get why they left that one out, because if you let go of the D-pad for a second accidentally and then you touched it again and then they were like, oh, that's traveling, like it would reduce the game's fun to zero in a heartbeat.
Well, if I remember correctly, and I don't know if there's any way to get viewer feedback, but if we can, then we're going to be awash with people being like, I can't believe you don't know this, but I don't.
Dude, I didn't know you could make your teammate pass back to you. Like whatever you have to say, you can't be that nervous about.
Well, no, this is actually a basketball rules. Is it like it's when you stop dribbling and then you start and then move again, that's traveling. So
yes, but if you stop moving, I think you stop dribbling.
In the game, do you? I thought they still like have like the dribbling animation even when you're standing still.
I mean, I could double check, but
like I said,
let me put it to you this way. So there were times where I'm pretty sure that you're right, but there were times that I went to take a 3-pointer and the guy got in my face, and so I pulled back. And then I ran up and dunked, which is definitely traveling.
Oh yeah, that's traveling. Like you contacted a travel agent.
Yes, and they booked me a one-way ticket to Boom Shakalaka.
There it is. Yeah, no, I definitely think that. Yeah, obviously you got to. I mean, like you got to like fudge some mechanics versus the real game. Otherwise, like you said, it's not fun. Especially and. I think that you can definitely get away with it more in a game like this than probably like Madden 2017. Because like it's also, you know, like I think probably frowned upon to light the ball on fire.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I mean the game overall has a cartoony-ish, like kind of lighthearted feel. But I was a little once I realized I could shove a guy with no repercussions, I was just like, oh, well, I'm not Scottie Pippen anymore. I'm Shovin' Pippen. Like, you just call me Dr. Shovin'. Like, this is now my occupation. I shove for a living. I play basketball recreationally.
Scotty the Shover Pippen. Like, and then, you know, just like cuts, you know, Borderlands style to like.
It does the dramatic blood splatter. Yeah.
So, yeah, no, that, and also too, I think that the reason to me why that stands out so much is because, like you said, like the game is very like over the top cartoonish. So like the traveling, the ball on fire, boom shakalaka, all of that is all in keeping with that very lighthearted cartoony thing. Shoving's not cartoony. Like
No.
it's more like it's like that one like dark moment. You know what it's very similar to? Is it's like that the one dark moment in like the otherwise sea of like pleasantness is it's very similar to like in Steven Universe when he's singing the song with the crystal gems about like the alternate timeline, right?
You mean the other Stevens?
Yeah.
And he sings a line about killing himself.
Yeah, when he's like, I learned to be true to myself by watching myself die.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that. It's just kind of like, so, you know, you're just sitting there watching this cool kids cartoon and like whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, what? You know? And it's that kind of like dissonance where all of a sudden you're like, yeah, man, it's cool. Oh, from downtown. Oh, the ball's on fire. Oh, this is very fun. Hey, I just got shoved to the ground by another professional in my industry. That doesn't feel, oh God, it happened again. Like, I don't feel safe, you know? Like,
well, and I did notice that even with the cartoony elements, the one thing, and this sounds silly, but I do mean this genuinely, the one thing that felt the most authentic about the game to me was how immediately I settled into the role of like has been watching professional sports. So like if one of my teammates missed a shot, I immediately was just like, what the hell, man?
oh,
like,
yeah.
or like if like, you know, I stole it from the other player, it's just like, oh, it's because you suck, your mother's a whore. Like you just immediately, like, even though the game is like silly and the stakes don't feel very high, like I immediately turned into like that stereotype of like a wife beater wearing, beer swilling, like, you know, shouting when everybody else is just trying to enjoy the game. And then like the second the game was done, I was just like, oh, that was fun. Like it was almost shocking, like how quickly you could go in and out of that and like not let the grudge carry over into the next game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's interesting because it's like almost like a gateway drug into getting into sports where you're just kind of like, oh, no, I can see the appeal of like being like very invested in this thing that I'm only, especially from my point of view with my experience, only mildly involved with winning or losing. So
well, I think in professional sports, it's definitely dangerous because people do actually like have riots and things. But then even in video gaming, like this is why I never really did online gaming, because I don't want to listen to some 12-year-old tell me that my mother's a whore because like I'm not as good at Call of Duty as they are.
Yes.
So like if I'm just shouting at the computer, I can treat that as a cathartic experience and then just like forget it forever. Even though it's still probably not great, at least no other humans are involved.
Yeah, worst case scenario, it's you doing drugs in your house by yourself, not doing
a lot of
drugs.
drug references this episode.
There is. That's yeah. I don't know what that's about. Sorry, I don't know. Maybe I'm just.
Is there some kind of meta narrative about professional sports and drugs?
No. It's not a metaphor. It is professional sports.
Oh,
but no. What was it? Actually, no. With the online, you know, gaming, I actually had an experience one time where I was like just playing online, and I didn't have my privacy settings set up the way I apparently needed/wanted them to on the PlayStation. And somebody like direct messaged me some like vitriol, and I was just kind of like, huh, weird. And to harken that back to this is like, that's not something that you would ever have to worry about in this particular game. Like, you know, so
because you could just turn to your side and punch your friend in the arm and be like, why did you miss that three?
Yeah, there's a big difference between the amount of sass you're willing to give somebody that's within punch-in distance. But yeah, no, I definitely I definitely did get I would say not like it is definitely a different kind of anger because like with Sonic or like another game where it's like a platformer, right? When you get that anger, like it's more like you're angry at the game, you know, because the game is messing up. But like with this, you're angry at that person, you know, like which is still the game, but it's like weird that at least for me, my brain compartmentalizes that differently, you know?
Well, it's even with the, the dated graphics and the, the simple controls, and it's 2-on-2, not 5-on-5, and all the other things that make it less realistic, like the ball being on fire. It still is a real life event that no matter how unsportsman you are is recognizable and identifiable. Like, unless you have never ever heard of basketball before, you can look at NBA Jam and be like, oh, I'm the red guys and those are the blue guys and we want to beat the blue guys. And it's kind of immediately you can put yourself in that position to the point where you do think like, I'm mad at the opposing player, not the AI, not the game, not the arcade cabinet, not, my controller's broken, but you're like, that person stole the ball from me. And it's like, no, that set of pixels had a hitbox you weren't able to understand on the depth of field that was poorly conveyed at this time in history.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess, not to wax too philosophical. But,
go for it.
But we definitely do that in I mean, like many places, because you don't say like, hey, it looks like your body is releasing a number of chemicals that are impeding your electrochemical response to situations in a particular way. You say like, dude, are you mad? You seem mad, like, so yeah, it's very easy, for our brain to like kludge things and say like, hey, like you said, like instead of being like mad at the game or this particular, group of pixels or like these AI equations and potentials that they cause things, like, no, that my brain recognizes that as a person, and it's very easy for me to compartmentalize it and say like that person screwed up. And then absolutely, I mean, I literally earlier this session I said, like at one point a person in the game screwed up my on fire streak, and then I stopped trying to win and started trying to ruin his life, and like and it's not alive. Like the only person that was losing was me. And I think we can all agree the only loser in that situation was me. But, like at the same point in time, I felt better for some reason because like, yeah, that guy, I knocked him to the ground, so.
I shoved him and there was no penalty shot.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so, there was a technical foul.
So there's two mechanics things I do want to give a particular thumbs up to. One is I thought the password system, even though I didn't actually use it, I thought the password system was actually really clever. Because there's no saves, right? Like this game does not employ that technology. And because there's only a finite number of conditions that could ever be true, it actually has a password system not unlike a Mega Man password system where you put in like, here is a series of letters and numbers, and it just presents you with the situation you expect, like your win ratio, your loss ratio, whatever. And that's actually a really smart way to adapt the arcade game to the home market instead of trying to bake in this complicated save mechanic on hardware that was not prepared for that. To just say like, hey, just, give us this hash and we will tell you, oh, right, you won 15 games and you lost 3.
Right.
Like that's, I thought that was pretty clever.
Oh yeah, no, and like you said, like Mega Man did something similar, and like I think that there is a part of me that waxes nostalgic about games that were simplistic enough to where there were a finite number of conditions to where you could use a function like that, right? Like I was just imagining the string of numbers you'd have to link together in order to do that with like Skyrim, Yeah.
Well, this is why in there was actually a bug in, I think from Fallout 3 on, where because of the sheer volume of information that had to be retained, eventually your save files would get so large that the PlayStation couldn't understand them anymore because it was not expecting save files to be hundreds and hundreds of megs.
Excellent. Well, wasn't that also an issue with the Minecraft as well, I think, for the PC?
I don't recall hearing that, but I mean, I imagine a similar problem where if you created a world where you filled up every single square with, you know, a block, like maybe it would be like, I wasn't planning for this.
Well, because I think if I remember correctly with Minecraft, because it wasn't an issue on the PlayStation or like Xbox because they had limited save file sizes. So basically your world was this big and that was your world. Hilariously, when they brought it over to the PS4, they made the save file larger, and so thus the world was larger, and that actually made me play it less because the world was too big, and I couldn't find anything. And all of a sudden, I was just kind of like, I got what I wanted, and I didn't want this. But on the computer, because it had variable save size, you could just the world could be infinitely large. And so what would happen is, and I think they patched this that way, it's no longer an issue, but like if you just set out in like a direction, it would eventually you hit like the outlands where like like basically as opposed to, you know, like there being ground and water and sky and that's it, right? You know, like the chunks would load weird, and so there would be like lava in the air on top of like rocks and netherrack and like all this like just abject insanity, you know. And it was just kind of like I was like, oh man, I wish I had been around to see that, but I didn't. And
yeah, that sounds like a classic like buffer overflow where it's like we will never ever see a number in this slot larger than 8. It's like, what if someone enters a 9? And it's like, well, then the universe ceases to make logical sense and all of reality breaks down around you in ways we can't predict and may be horrifying.
And I think it's just, I don't know why there's a part of me that admires the computers for trying to like make sense of those situations where it's just kind of like, alrighty, you're only gonna have numbers 1 through 9. Well, what if 10? And it's like, and the computer says like, okay, well, if 10, then there is a monkey god that rains down fire with. It's just like they're like, this is what I've got because there can't be 10, but you've shown me 10, so obviously insanity. You know, like
I mean, there's probably documentaries and books and things written about the bizarre ways that programmers have had to get around technical limitations, and some of them rely on knowing the ways the computer will break. So it's like, okay, in every normal circumstance, we never ever want this variable to be greater than a 7. But there's this one point in the game where there's all this stuff in RAM, and the only way we can make this equation balance is if we put an 8 into this variable. Well, you said never to put anything larger than a 7 in there. Well, it's like in Ghostbusters, it's like, Egon, you said crossing the streams was bad.
Yes, and then you know, you put the 8 in, and thus the computer asks, "Are you a god?" And you say yes.
Well, so did you do any of the cheat codes this time? I meant to, and I didn't get around to it.
I also did not get around to it, which, I mean, because basically I looked at the cheat codes, and by the way, I did love how we got on God and the Machine, and then it's like this one for NBA Jam for some reason has been all over the place. There's been gods and drugs, and I don't even know what's going on here. But anyways, not the most honed episode. But no, I was going to, but I didn't for 2 reasons. One, I'm lazy. And then 2, like, I kind of felt that the cheat codes were self-explanatory, you know? Like, in the sense that it was like, you know, you can unlock playing as Bill Clinton or something like that, right? I think is one of them. Yeah. I was like, okay, no, I got it. And like I was just kind of like, I just like imagined a Bill Clinton sprite that does all the other same stuff. I was like, I kind of feel like I got the experience just by reading what it did.
I think a couple of them have like super unfair stats. So I mean, there's some incentive to do it, but a lot of it is the joke.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, I got to play. And especially when I saw, like, because to be honest, like I looked at them and I looked at, I think like the first couple that I saw online were, you know, like, oh, all right, whatever. And then it was the Clintons one that like I think pushed me over the edge to not doing it, because I was just kind of like, yeah, cool 90s, got it. And then, like, you know, like I am just boom shakalaka it out, man. Like I don't need any more 90s references, like with Bill Clinton like jamming out on his sax while he slam dunks and the Animaniacs sing in the background. Like,
yeah, agreed. There some of them are you know, like always on fire, or like easier to steal from the enemy and stuff like that, or enemy, the opposing team, the enemy.
They are the enemy.
The reason I asked is just to make an effort to tie back what we were talking about to this. Is some of the cheat codes, like always on fire, is B B B B B B B up YB.
Wow.
It's and I mean, I'm sure that that's not, you know, doing a buffer overflow or like a bit shift on the code, but it feels like someone was doing playtesting and they said, what's the most times someone would ever press B in a row? And they were like, I don't know, like 6 times. And it's like, okay, so if you press B 7 times, you turn into Jesus. And it's like, what? It's like, really? Like that's all we're doing? Like, one of them is literally just hit any button 6 times and then press 3 buttons at the same time. And it's like a kid smashing the controller might do that by accident. And maybe that's why they made them this way.
Well, that would be amazing, because in the years before the internet and when uncles that worked at PlayStation at Nintendo roamed the earth, like, could you imagine, like, let's just say, you know, like you're just sitting there, you're hanging out, you're eating your Fruit Loops, you know, whatever. And like, yeah, you're at the title screen and you're just like hitting all sorts of random buttons. You hit enter. And then all of a sudden, like, you get to play as, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Now you're Al Gore and you're always on fire and you have an infinite turbo meter. And it's like, what happened?
Right. Because then you would go mad trying to reproduce that. Like, yeah. Like you'd come in and like your beard has grown long, keeping in mind that you're 12, you know, and it's like you're sitting there like, how can I be on fire, Al Gore?
Well, this would be like a you know what a crazy wall is? Like in a crime drama where there's like a bunch of pictures with like red string connecting. Like this is how those people get started.
Yeah.
Like because eventually, you know, your mom came in and made you turn off Super Nintendo and go eat dinner, and then the next day she comes in and you've got the long beard and a crazy wall with all the buttons on it. And it's like Al Gore, always on fire, infinite turbo, question mark, because you didn't have enough time to find out if the turbo never runs out. And there's like, there's like pictures of all the different controller buttons and like numbers next to them.
And there's like a controller that's like open, you know, and like, like the innards, and like there's like some of those like circuit diagrams, and you're like, no, man, I gotta figure this out. So okay, so just we've established that that Golden Axe is why I am the way I am, and that the reason why people have crazy walls is because of NBA Jam. I'm wondering if we can slowly create the world through these different games, you know, like these are the reasons why everything happens. But I like the headcanon. I have accepted the headcanon now of people who have crazy walls at one point entered in a weird code to like NBA Jam and were never able to figure it out. And then that's how they got started.
Especially with the huge variety of things one could have a crazy wall about. I like that they all started with NBA Jam.
Yes. Everyone, without question.
It's like everyone trying to prove the moon landing is fake or that the JFK assassination was an inside job. Like they all started with NBA Jam.
If I remember correctly, for the JFK assassination, that was Marge Simpson, correct?
Yeah, sure. I don't have a good follow up to that. Normally, like I'm all set with my racket to return your volley, but that like I was talking to the ref, like I did not realize we were in play.
Yeah,
like aced it.
So yeah. Anything else on gameplay? The one thing actually, sorry, there was one other thing I did want to mention is just because it's very much more common of games of this era, but less and less common nowadays, and it's something that I appreciated. I like having a pause function. I do.
Oh god, yes.
It's so nice, you know. I like that the pause function was like the ref blowing a whistle like for timeout. I thought that was like kind of a nice little touch.
Cute.
Yeah, you know. But but yeah, because at one point, like something happened where, like I was either getting frustrated or I had to go do something. And just the act of being able to be like, pause, and then just like, and it just stopped. And I was like, oh, hey, that's nice. Like I don't have to stress about like, I've got 30 seconds while the map sets up for me to go like run, do 5 things and then get back. Cause otherwise I'm going to get kicked from the game. Like none of that. Just,
yeah. This is another thing about online gaming that always turned me off is the idea, and even discounting like a fee like World of Warcraft or EverQuest style, where it's like, oh, I gotta buy this game and then I have to pay a subscription, which I mean, I get logically is required for the business to function, but I'm a kid and I don't want to pay you, or I can't pay you. Right. But one of the biggest turnoffs to me about online play of any kind, free or otherwise, is like, oh, I want to stop, but it's not my decision.
Right.
And I don't know. Maybe it was growing up playing the kinds of games I did as a kid where that was always an option, is that when my friends started to move to like online shooters and online like RPG, MMO RPGs and stuff, I was just like, but like, what if you have to piss? And like no one ever had a good answer for that, because to them the game was always more important than anything else their life could bring up. And it's like, no, I just need to be able to stop physics whenever it suits me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, you got 2 options: either A, catheter, or B, you just you deal with that. Actually,
you just let nature take its course.
Yeah. One of my favorite go-tos is especially because for most games they'll kick you because you're inactive, which is reasonable, because the opposite to that is that when you're on the team and you're getting your butt handed to you and you see like one of the characters is just standing there staring at a wall blankly, and you're like, oh man, if I could go find this person and kill them, I would. My go-to is handing the controller off to Megan, and I'm just like, just twirl this button around. It's all you got to do. If you want to try playing the game, you can do that too. But I just need you to be moving me around while I go take care of these, like putting Teddy back down or whatever. Just do that.
I don't know what the right technological solution is, but having your wife sit nearby and twirl the analog stick in a circle seems like a flaw that could maybe be designed out of the game.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, like, especially when you can break it that easily. It just reminded me so much of, again, not to bring it back to The Simpsons, but like Homer when he like has like the little like duck thing, like constantly tapping Y on his computer.
When he makes himself morbidly obese intentionally.
Yeah. That like I was just it's basically that's my workaround. Is it's just kind of like if I could get one of like Teddy's toys to like just twirl the analog stick, I would. But anyways,
yeah. And for your knowledge, I am on a recording that you can hold against me later, giving you blanket permission to always bring it back to The Simpsons.
Excellent. Done. And can never be undone.
So I guess, we got to do the final check.
Yep.
Does it hold up?
I would say it performed at or near expectations. So yeah. I mean, was it as good as I remember it being? No. Was it playable? Absolutely.
So I'm with you. Like I respect your 6 out of 10, but I would bump it up just a little bit, because I felt like, and I'm sure NBA Jam doesn't get to take credit for this idea, but the quarters of 3 minutes and having virtually nothing to do or interact with or waste your time on other than playing the game meant that it felt really like dippable. Like there were a couple times over the course of the last few weeks where I was like, oh, I should probably put in some time with NBA Jam, but I only have 10 minutes. Oh, that's enough. Like I can just sit down and like bang out a game and then go back to whatever I'm doing, because, it's a cartridge game, so it boots up instantly. There's no nonsense to deal with. Like you just select a team and you are immediately playing a game. The little stupid, unbelievably pixelated Game Boy camera quality graphics at the halftime thing are only, a second and a half long. And then you're back to the game, and then the game is over. And if you win, there's no big fanfare. If you lose, there's no big pity party. I was almost nostalgic just for how playable, like approachable the game was. Because most modern games, it's like, man, I could be at the halftime animation by the time I even got to the friggin' loading screen on a PlayStation or an Xbox.
Right, on like Fallout, where you've just got to watch those 3D graphics twirl and twirl, like beautiful nonsense.
I have a friend who got Mass Effect Andromeda, and she was telling me like, oh, I have to finish this thing for work, but I really am looking forward to playing this later. And I don't know why I just was suddenly overwhelmed with this bit of like common sense wisdom, but I was like, have you put the game into your PlayStation yet? And she was like, no. And I was like, you should do that, because I can almost guarantee you there's like a 3 gigabyte patch you're going to have to download before you can start playing the game. Oh yeah. No,
patching games is just the way of things. Megan recently purchased Kingdom Hearts thing, whatever.
The best of trilogy pack, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And I was doing a video chat that evening, and so I was just like, oh, that's fine. So I just put the disc in because I was just going to get everything set up for her, and it was just kind of like, hey, you've got like a 5 gig patch for this game, and I was like, oh right, modern gaming.
Yeah, cool. It's painful.
Yeah, and so I was just kind of like, yeah, neat. Cool story, bro. So what I'm going to do is suspend that because it's eating up my bandwidth. Yep. And then I'm going to disconnect the PlayStation from the internet to make absolutely sure it doesn't try to do it while I'm not paying attention, and then let you play it unupdated because luckily it's not an online game. But yeah, if that was an online game, you can't play it without it being updated.
But yeah, that was the one thing about it that I found really nice, is like, I don't have to want to play this game, and I'm not required to play this game for 3 straight hours. I can sit down, play a single game, and if that game is 4 3-minute quarters, it's the entire play experience is 12 minutes and like 40 seconds, because there's, turning the game on, selecting my team, watching the terrible animation at game end, and like that's it. So it's almost 100% playtime, which, now that I say that out loud, is even funnier because most sports are more break time than playtime. So that's like even more hee making.
Yeah. So the irony has come full circle. So overall, a 6 out of 10 and a 7 out of 10.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but if the question is, is it worth a play if you like games like this? Again, I'm not a huge sports person, and I'm not a huge fan of games like this. But if you like games like this, yeah, absolutely. Is it as amazing as you remember it as a kid? No. Unlike games where we played, where I'm like, this is exactly as amazing as I remember it. Like it some of it's not as great. Is it dated? Absolutely. But it's still fun. It's still worth a play.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this another nostalgia monocle. Like, I probably wouldn't recommend this to someone who'd never played it before, but to someone who had played it as a kid, I'd be like, yeah, go ahead, invest 12 minutes in it.
Yeah, take another swing, because it's worth swinging at.
All right, so next time we think Tecmo Super Bowl.
Yeah,
I'd say Mutant League Hockey.
No, for the next one, it should be Madden 1995, which I'm sure exists. Does it?
Almost definitely. Well, when was the first Madden game? First Madden game. Survey says 88. MS-DOS.
Oh my stars and garters. That
this might require further research.
Yeah, no, let's look into that. But I'll tell you what, the only way we're going to be playing Madden 88 is if there's one particular character that doesn't wear a helmet. He wears a long green cap and throws bombs at people when he plays.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone, there's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile.